You are now entering a dangerous liberty zone where God-given natural rights are held sacred and exercised. This is your warning. Tyranny, fascism, and censorship will not be tolerated. Ideas will be exchanged freely. Rigorous debate and open discourse is encouraged. If you are weak and your beliefs are fragile, you should leave now. Prepare yourself. We are now live on the Dangerous Liberty Podcast. All right, folks, welcome. And what is this? Thursday. Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Dangerous Liberty Podcast. We got another great show for you today. I want to say hi to everybody over in the chat. We'll get a few of you guys. One, I want to say hi to all of the mods. Thank you all for what you guys do. It means a lot to me, and it really does free up my bandwidth so we can do some things over here. JP Six Gunner, welcome. Matt Dubinsky, welcome. Gus Grizzly, Dead Star, old Jeff over there, Hisco, Heiza, Koa, something. And everybody else over there. I won't be able to get to you, but make sure you guys say hi over there so that we know you're here. We'll give it just a few minutes. Usually takes 5-10 minutes before people fill in completely. But we do have two great guests for you tonight, and we're going to be taking on the controversial topic of, the 30-06 and the ballistics that are involved with that. As always with this, folks, make sure that you guys like, share, subscribe. We are offering memberships. If you want to support this channel, you want to support what we do, you can definitely get the membership. That does help. We do encourage disagreement, folks. I'm all about it. That's why I do these lives. If I just wanted to sit here and do a recorded podcast and not include your guys' comments, I could do that. With that being said, what we're not going to tolerate is just ad hominems, name calling. If you're going to be childish and you don't want to have a discussion, you can go do that somewhere else. It's not going to happen here. So I actually wish we had nothing but people that disagree with us over in the comments so we can have a discussion and a civil discussion. And that's what this is all about. I guess without further ado, what I'm going to do is go ahead and bring on Justice and Jean-Francois. There's Justin down there. All right. Justin, if you will, just take a minute and kind of introduce yourself. Tell us about your background regarding your subject matter expertise in firearms.
Sure. So you caught me finishing my Snickers bar. So my name is Justin Nazaroff. I am the owner of Fenix Ammunition Company. We are a small arms manufacturer, family owned. We service 100% the civilian market. We don't do any business with the government or any federal agency, even law enforcement. We serve just the civilian population in particular. We've been in business for 10 years. We're about 25 minutes northwest of Detroit. So I've got about 10 years roughly experience in manufacturing ammunition, all the way from something as small as 380 up to 30-06 and above. Some of the larger rifle calibers aren't in our mainstay lineup, but before that, I worked in actually insurance consulting for manufacturing companies in aerospace and defense, and that's what led me into this career. So I would consider myself a hobbyist engineer. I've got a pretty long training resume in terms of, actual firearms experience, something like 700 or 800 hours of hands-on training with companies like Haley Strategic and Cogworks, Warrior Poet Society, all the big name companies. So I've both manufactured every type of cartridge you can imagine, and I have fired those cartridges into just about everything that you can imagine. So that's kind of how I got into this conversation.
So 2 questions. Number one, your subject matter expertise isn't confined to you've been hunting your whole life with your pappy shotgun. And
correct.
Number 2, I just want to clarify, you don't have any contracts with Israel or the federal government, right?
No, definitely not. I mean, I've actually personally never even been out of the country. I don't have any. I consider myself an American. My family is, second, third generation Americans. And I really don't give a shit about any country aside from the U.S. So
I couldn't agree with you more, folks. I'm just so sick of these again. They're ad hominem, no argument, lazy comments to undermine what somebody's saying, whether you're calling me a Fed or your Israel's or my shekels or all this stuff. I mean, it's childish, it's dumb, and it just shows that you can't articulate a good argument with this. So again, it's not going to be put up with over here. If you can go do that on Twitter on your lonesome. Jean-Francois, tell us a little bit about you.
So I'm Dr. Jean-Francois Gariepy. People call me JF on the internet. I am a biologist and a surgeon. I come at ballistics mostly from a biological tissue perspective. And for the last 10 years, I've been in streaming and public commentary. And I've been worried about seeing the mechanism for truth finding on the public space being completely soiled by spammers, by liars, by people who make conspiracy theories that are baseless. So I'm very interested at fixing how we discuss of things honestly and how we differentiate between proving that something is impossible or proving that something is possible.
Yeah. So just to clarify too, I know you're in Canada. You're not a U.S. Fed Canadian, and you're not also paid by Israel, right?
I am not a Fed, and as far as Israel, the last checks I've received from them was from Jeff Epstein in 2015. So I'm clear.
All right. Yeah. All right. And just for everybody coming here, and just so you know a little bit about me, my name is Gary Melton. I am the owner of Paramount Tactical Solutions. We are a training company. We kind of specialize in long range, and we also do a lot of retail sales on the firearms side. We have our own line of custom rifles. I was a sniper team leader with the initial push into Iraq. I've been shooting long range professionally since then, either teaching, working for the military. I later became a Green Beret. By the way, I wasn't just any Green Beret. I was 18 Bravo. It's a weapons sergeant. So I went to not only had extensive firearms training for my MOS phase, but then I actually went to multiple different armor level schools on many different weapon systems. When I got out of the military, not long after that, we started a training company. I've done the exact same thing ever since. And I will say that I'm not a ballistic expert, especially in the terminal ballistics arena, because I was a Green Beret or even because I was in the military. It's because part of that definitely contributed to that, but it's because of the extensive amount of testing and things that I've done since then. We have ammo manufacturers that send us ammunition to test. We have firearms manufacturers that send us firearms to test and evaluate. And then, we sell a lot of firearms. We build our own firearms. So again, what you have here is a pretty extensive and diverse areas of expertise on this. And it is far more extensive than anything that I've seen with people talking about this, at least 99.99%. So again, just because you were in the military, just because you're a hunter, doesn't mean you know jack all about ballistics. And what people are relying on is, their little sliver of experience, and it's really small. I've shot thousands of rounds, and I guarantee you, Justin, millions of rounds, and I guarantee you, Justin is way up there too. I want to clarify kind of what we're going to talk about tonight. And I will tell you this right now, that none of us here are saying that the 30-06, that we can prove that the 30-06 was definitely used in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We don't have enough information for that. What we are here to say is there's far from enough information available to say that he wasn't shot with a 30-06. That's what we're saying. I think we all agree that terminal ballistics results that we saw with Charlie Kirk was definitely atypical. I've said that from the beginning, but it's far from unheard of. And out of all three types of ballistics, folks, there's three types of ballistics. There's internal, external, and terminal. And terminal is what we're talking about when it comes to what happens when a round actually impacts a target. Terminal ballistics are by far the most unpredictable and the most difficult to replicate results. We're talking about an extremely high-speed, energetic event that is actually impossible to perfectly replicate at any time using the exact same ammunition, shooting at the exact same medium. You cannot replicate those results because they are so varied. Given the information that we do have and the overwhelming evidence that points to Tyler Robinson, it's illogical for us to dismiss, or at least for me, it's illogical for us to dismiss him as the shooter because of an atypical result. That includes the fact that we have zero evidence of another shooter in another location. It's also preposterous to me that you would have me believe that there was some highly sophisticated state-sponsored assassination team involved that just accidentally used a caliber that contradicts what the supposed patsy has. That is much harder to believe than us saying, hey, you know what? We had an atypical result, and we're just going to write this whole thing off as some big conspiracy because the 30-06 round did something we weren't expecting. One of the things we are going to talk about tonight, though, is there are, however, many cases that we can, case studies that we can look at that clearly indicate that terminal ballistic results that we saw in Charlie Kirk's case are not only possible, but actually happen fairly often. And I would refer people back to what happened with Martin Luther King. That is something I've been diving into for the last few weeks. It is an interesting case, and we'll probably talk about that. Last but not least, what we're going to do is we're going to have a conversation between the three of us like a normal podcast. We will be getting to your questions. We're going to save those toward the end, and we will prioritize super chats, but we will also try to get to as many live comments as possible. Jean-Francois, I think I'm going to get to you first. You put out a pretty good video, and you've put out some data kind of defining what's going on with this. And as a matter of fact, I will share this. You want to just kind of play through your video a little bit, and then you kind of narrate it?
Absolutely.
All right.
So I came at this question in terms of, first, I was seeing that people were claiming that the bullet in Charlie Kirk's neck was headed to a bone. And they were calling out the idea that the bone should have been destroyed, that a bone cannot stop a bullet. So I started being interested at following other hypotheses in terms of the trajectory of the bullet in the flesh of the neck. So that's what led to this video, in which I just put 2 images of pork belly, but there's a lot of information in there in terms of, first, how the bullet approaches tissue. When you have an approach of the tissue by a bullet, it can enter straight. And when it enters straight, it can pierce the skin easily. In fact, a bullet from a 30-06 is approximately 10 times faster than needed to pierce the skin. So it has a lot of momentum. And in a way, the people who are questioning this narrative, maybe they had a point, which is, well, if you're at the point of entry of the neck skin and you have 10 times the speed that you would need to pierce, how is it possible that it doesn't pierce the second layer of skin? How is it possible that we, in other words, don't have an exit wound? Here I show the forces that are at play in a forward advancing bullet in tissue. And you got all of the fat and blood vessels and nerves from the top that are pushing down. And you also have the same tissue pushing up. So you have an equilibrium of forces, and the bullet can absolutely follow a straight trajectory, in which case it will face only the resistance from the front. And that resistance significantly slows down the bullet. But it seems, quantifying this, that the slowing down of a straight bullet would not be enough. It would be expected that the bullet still continues through the back of the neck and creates an exit wound. But I've been exploring other scenarios which are extremely common in hunting, because a bullet never exactly arrives at 0 degrees with respect to the tissue. Here I'm showing a bullet arriving at an angle of about 16 degrees. And you have to know first that the elevation at which you shoot will change that angle. The yaw of repose of the bullet as it travels through time and distance, it will lead to an inclination of the bullet, and the position of the person that is the target will also influence that angle. Now, an angled entry of a bullet, it leads to a differential of pressure. There is a side of the bullet here, the upper side, that gets much more pressure than the lower side. because it faces much more tissue, whereas the lower side is already freed by the tip of the bullet. So what you have is you have a conversion. Now, the energy, the speed of the bullet is now converting. Instead of the bullet advancing that fast, it will give up a little bit of its speed to change into rotation. So that's what they call a tumbling bullet. And with a tumbling bullet, what do you have? You have more damage. You have a larger area of the tissue that is affected. You have also a higher loss of energy of the bullet. So the bullet, as it travels rotationally, creates much more damage inside. But when it arrives at the back, it can be at any angle. It's almost random, the angle at which it will be at the back of the neck. So it's entirely possible that this bullet, and we can also talk later about fragmentation possibilities, but even a full bullet, if it had made its way without collisions on bone, it would have arrived at the back of Charlie Kirk's neck, and it could have been angled 90 degrees. It could have been any angle between 90 and 0. And so it's not necessary that the sharp part of the bullet is facing the back of the skin in the same way it was facing mostly the front of the skin. This is why the penetration wound is always easier in terms of energy conservation and physics than the exit wound. The exit wound doesn't happen all the time. And there are hunter testimonies all over the internet, way before Charlie Kirk was assassinated, that they regularly find the bullet. And what I find fascinating about the hunter testimonies is when they find the bullet inside the animal, it is very often under the hide of the other side. So the exit wound and the skin seems to be a big barrier to bullets exiting. The bullets for a high-powered bullet don't stop very much in super soft tissue, but they do stop a lot under the hide.
Yep. You got anything else to add to that part, JF?
That's pretty much it. Also, we have to consider that there is a bounce back from the skin, because the skin of humans is extremely elastic. And here I show some frames in which I believe that in these frames there is a bump. I've watched the frame just before this one and after this one. I believe that what we see here is the neck, the skin on the neck of Charlie Kirk's being stretched by internal pushing. Now, this internal pushing might be the bullet itself as a whole, or it could be fragments of the bullet that were just generally headed in that direction. So when the skin is stretched that way, it will provide an elastic push back into the body. So not only has the bullet, does it still have some momentum, because not all of its momentum was flat. Some of its momentum was diagonal. It was going down partly already. And on top of it, you have the skin stretching back, and it's a little bit like a trampoline effect. It can push back the bullets into another part of the body.
Well, and that's, of course, it could even be hitting his spine, and the spine being, being attached with the entire vertebrae, being attached with cartilage. It is going to absorb energy better than, something without it, right? And that's one of the challenges, folks, that I have people all the time. Well, Gary, we're going to do some ballistic testing. But here's the reality. It's like, hey, when they're like, hey, do some ballistic testing, I'm like, all right, fine. All you need to do is tell me what ammunition that Tyler was using. And then the other thing that I need is like 50 cadavers so that I can get a large sample size that are about the size and weight of Charlie Kirk. Because, folks, I got 2 of the ballistic gel dummies over there. It's not even close to a good analog. The bones in it are plastic. They're not held together by cartilage. We have, when you're looking at the ballistic gel, it is a consistent medium. There is nothing consistent about the human body. You got skin, you got muscle, you got bone, you got fluids that you're going through. And it is almost impossible to replicate the exact same thing. I do think that we could, if we knew exactly what type of ammunition or even something close to it, even probably with the ballistic gel dummy, we may or may not be able to do that. But like a ballistic gel dummy is not a good analog. It's not even close to what that is.
Absolutely. The human tissue is filled with variations.
Yeah.
And if you're on a car and you drive a car on ice or snow, you know that you can slide if you encounter a rock or if you encounter something that blocks the right side of your car, but not the left side. And it's the same thing for a bullet driving into human tissue. What if there's a blood vessel on the left and it's loose? And what if there's a strong muscle on the right and it's thick and stiff? The bullet is faced with an asymmetry of forces that leads it to turn, and that leads it to take a completely different direction than what it does in air.
100%. And the last thing I'm going to say before I get Justin in here, again, all you got to do is look at Martin Luther King. Now, what I've been hearing all over the internet is anytime that you shoot a man with a 30-06, it's going to blow right through him with there's no contingencies in there. It's like it's going to blow right through them. It's going to take his head off, all these things. Well, what we have is Martin Luther King. He was shot in the right side of the face. The bullet went through his jawbone, went into his neck right here, and actually got lodged in the back of his back. And it was so inconsequential. Yes, it killed him, but we did not have an exit wound. And he even had an open casket. And then other people will say, well, it hit his mandible. Well, okay, so what's your point? And another case study that we can just look at from that point was Thomas Crooks. All right, Thomas Crooks was actually shot with a 300 Win Mag, which has about 50% more energy than 30-06. Yes, we did have an exit wound, but it didn't blow his head to pieces. It didn't, like, I feel like people are looking at movies. And when people shoot things like milk jugs and all the dumb shit that I see on the YouTube, and then they're shooting at 20 yards, they're not shooting at the right angle. And by the way, according to our 3D model, now look, when the whole thing happened with Charlie Kirk, within the first week, I calculated the angle of the shot. I said it was 9.2 degrees, given the elevation and given as good as I could an approximation to where Charlie Kirk was off the ground and all those things. Well, based on our model that we have, let me pull this up. And if you guys can download this model. Like, we went and spent all the money on this thing. You can download the software, and then you can download. This always does this to me. I think I'm going to just share my entire screen. Share my entire screen. Let's do that. You can download this interactive model, and we have shooting positions. Here's the Velocity Building perspective. All right. So this is the exact perspective. This was a 3D model that we put together using a drone survey, and then CJ Carenti and his team of engineers put together that everything that wasn't there when we did the drone survey. You can see it from the Sorensen building. All right, you can see all these different perspectives, and then of course you can just pull out of this, and then you can fly around and check out different locations and see what's possible. And then you can draw lines. It'll give you the exact line of sight. It'll give you the angle, the distance, all of those things. All right, we actually went there. We got this done. We spent a lot of time and money on it. Please use it, and you can use it for, whatever you'd like to. You can figure out if you have a theory of a separate shooter somewhere. Again, that's open to you to check that out. All right, Justin, talk to us, Goose.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty basic. I think most of these people are just doing the standard conspiracy theory tack, which is show me the test. You need to prove the negative. Yeah. And so, as you said earlier, every shooting is a unique event. I've been telling people lately, if you ask me to recreate a car accident at 75 miles an hour, yeah, sure, I can do that. But do you think if I did that 100 times that all the damage on both vehicles would be exactly the same in every scenario? And the answer is, of course not, because things happen. You just can't perfectly recreate a projectile moving into human tissue in any reliable fashion. It's a unique event, and yeah, so it's entirely plausible that from that angle, the bullet struck something hard like the spine. I mean, that's what they're claiming, right? They're saying that it hit him in the neck. I think what people are getting caught up on is a lot of the offhand comments and the conjecture. You know, you have people referring back to the surgeon who talks to one of Charlie's friends, I believe, after everything was said and done, and said, you know, it was a miracle that his spine was so strong, and you know, he had a spine of steel and it stopped the bullet. And so just right there, people turn their brain off and they think that the bullet literally stopped in its tracks the minute that it hit his spine, because, well, that's what the surgeon said.
Yeah.
And so it's like, guys, have you ever been to a hospital? Have you ever talked to a doctor that's talking to somebody whose friend was just brutally murdered in front of the entire world in 4K definition on live?
And just to clarify, Justin, so that we're not beat up in the comments or anyone's taking anything out of the comment, like the surgeon gave, it was Andrew Colvett. The surgeon gave him a very layman's term, you know, description of what happened. And then Andrew Colvett, you know, he's a spokesman for TPUSA. And then he went out there and he, you know, said the Superman bones and things like that. And it was just meant to be like an inspirational side note. And people took that and ran with it and over exaggerated it. And again, it was a straw man. Oh, you're supposed to make me believe that he just had the bones of Superman. A great explanation. That's not what it was.
No.
And the other thing when we're talking about this, to be clear, is I did a video on this and I talked about it. Like, basically what was relayed to even Stephen Gardner directly from Andrew Colvett is that what was said was the C2 was hit, and then like the C5, C6, and then the T1, I believe it was. The point is like, no one's saying that was the trajectory. What is saying is that there was damage to those. Now, did they actually find bullet fragments in those vertebrae, or are we saying those vertebrae were crushed? We don't know.
Sure.
Like, because there wasn't enough technical information provided in that brief statement to tell us exactly. But everyone turned that into, hey, it hit his C2, and then it went straight down into and lodged in the C7. I don't think that's what happened, or the T1. I don't think that's what happened. I think, if anything, it hit his T1, possibly compressed his spine, just like what JF showed earlier. We had this, it moved everything, crushing some of that, or we could have had fragmentation go up in that direction. I think that's a little unlikely. It could happen. Again, it's a ballistic event. Like, it's so much energy happening so fast, and you have no idea what that bullet's doing. But I just want to kind of clarify that, Justin.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm getting at is, so, you know, we know that the bullet hit the spine in some form or fashion, and of course you have a lot of explosive energy occurring right at that moment, and so it's almost assuredly going to damage other parts of the vertebrae that weren't directly struck by the bullet. And as you can see in the videos that JF put up, the still frames, I mean, you can see the neck moving backward behind the t-shirt. So, you know, what I think happened is it probably hit somewhere in the spine. It deflected downward, and it probably hit somewhere in the back where the rib cage comes together, hit more bones, and then that caused a lot of elastic deformation in the back muscles and the back of the skin, and probably changed direction again, and it looks like it ended up somewhere in his, you know, upper thoracic. So the idea that could never happen is just, it's just nonsensical. Would that happen 100 times out of 100? Well, of course not. But we're talking about the law of large numbers. I mean, you as I said, every shooting event is unique, just like every car accident is unique. If we took a survey of every car accident that happened on the highway in the U.S., head-on collisions, and we compared photographs of all those head-on collisions, none of them would look exactly identical. They would have some similarities, to be sure, but no two of them would be so perfectly alike that we could be expected to recreate the event. And so that's the other thing I've been saying to these people is they keep telling me, well, you're the ammunition guy, so why don't you just recreate it? And I say, okay, well, sure, I'll recreate it. Tell me tell me in your mind the way for me to set this experiment up that would satisfy you.
Yeah.
And so let's start with the cartridge itself. Again, telling us that it was a 30-06 is kind of like saying Charlie Kirk got hit with a four-door sedan. Was it a Chevy Volt going 30 miles an hour, or was it a BMW going 80 miles an hour? We don't know. And so we don't know if the bullet was 200 grains or 150 grains. We don't know if it was a full metal jacket projectile that probably would have passed through without expanding or deforming all that much. But more than likely, it probably wasn't. I mean, again, let's just assume that Tyler is the shooter. Let's assume that that's the best guess that we have right now. So you're talking about somebody who decided to murder a public figure in an open forum. Somebody with shooting experience. He had been shooting with his family for years. So to me, putting myself in his shoes, God forbid, I would never use an FMJ for that. Even if I was completely unschooled on what I was doing, you would go to Cabela's, you would go to the ammunition aisle, and you'd pick the box with the deer on the side. And so almost assuredly what he was hit with is some kind of a soft point or hollow point projectile. And that's exactly what they're designed to do. It's not that they will never leave an exit wound, but they're designed to slow down and fragment and deform inside the body to cause as much catastrophic damage as possible without. I mean, all of our handgun ammunition that we sell for concealed carry is designed to not leave the body. Is that 100% certainty? Definitely not. If you shoot somebody at muzzle velocity against their chest, is it possible that a 9mm hollow point is going to come all the way out the back? For sure, 100%. So, getting back to recreating what happened, we don't know even some of the basic facts.
Yeah.
We may be able to calculate the angle from the roof, but what we can't really totally calculate without having a photo of him laying in prone on the roof is the yaw angle. So we don't know exactly what angle the shooter was relative to Charlie Kirk if they were facing each other chest to chest. He might have been.
And that's the other thing too, is we can't calculate the exact entry angle with Charlie Kirk. He was slumping over a little bit. Was he a little bit this way? Was he a little bit this way? Like
exactly.
1,000 variables without even getting into the ammunition. And then once we get to the ammunition, and I guess I would say, yeah, it's probably most likely that he used some sort of hunting ammunition. But what we don't know is, like, number one, especially with 30-06, there's a lot of old ammunition, and there's a huge variety from varmint to low recoil. I got some tumble upon impact over here. I got
grand load, yeah, exactly.
It could have been something that was low recoil that he had been shooting with that his grandfather or dad bought for him to go out and do recreational shooting. Then we don't know what condition the ammo was. Was it stored properly? Did we have, like, there's a lot of variables there. And then that's without even getting into the projectile itself. Was that frangible? Was that a ballistic tip? Was that soft point? And then we don't know what weight he was using, or if it was even properly stabilized. That would be determined by the rifling on the gun itself. Correct. It could have been an unstable round as well, so it could have started to yaw or tumble early. So there's 1,000 variations. And again, my problem is like, you're taking this one thing that is atypical. All right. There's no doubt about it. It's atypical. But then you're asking me to take all of this other information and just throw it out the window to believe something that we not only have no evidence for, there's actually a lot of evidence against. We don't know of any other shooter. Like, folks, I've been there. I'm telling you, like, there's almost no other place for another shooter to be. And there's definitely no place for a shooter to be where they wouldn't be seen. And then again, like, the idea that we have this French Foreign Legion married an Israeli assassin up on the roof, and they're like, hey, we're going to pin this on Tyler Robinson. Oh, yeah. And then we get away cleanly. Nobody saw all these people on the ground, supposedly, or whatever theory that you ascribe to. Nobody saw all these people. It worked. It was flawless. But then You know what? What gun did he have? Oh, a 30-06. Crap. I used 5.56 today. My bad. Like it's ridiculous. That in itself
To
is
follow up
Yep, go ahead.
on the soft core bullets, I have a study from Oregon State. A 30-06 bullets, Remington core locked, soft point, very common in use for hunting. They fragment the vast majority of the case, and the main bullet fragment, the most heavy one that remains, has only 57% of the initial mass of the bullet. That means almost half of the bullet tends to explode, and in fact, it can be up to total disintegration, where it will fragment into hundreds of bouts. And you were talking about the care for the bullet. We know that Tyler Robinson, in front of his own roommate, has been spending time engraving things on the casing. That means he was spending time with these bullets, looking at them. He was a gamer, maybe spending time playing on his computer, having these bullets on his table. It's very possible that they were exposed to various humidity, water, or lack of care that eventually led to corrosion. So even without the corrosion, of course, we can explain that these bullets could fragment, but add the fact that he may not have been caring of them, or he may have been holding them for so long that they eventually achieved corrosion. It adds a lot of factors that could hypothetically totally explain a fragmentation. Now, once you have a fragmentation, all of the parts that the main bullet loses, they all go out with their own kinetic energy and they take it out of the total. All we need is that between the 4 inches that separate the front of Charlie's neck and the back, there is enough loss of energy that it becomes impossible for any of these fragments to pierce in the back of the neck. And I've been doing the calculations in terms of energy, entropy, speed, loss of momentum, and also the fact that fragments, they need much more speed to pass through the skin. So a bullet, that's well...
Let me interrupt you just real quick. The other thing too is it's not 4 inches no matter what, because again, number one, we have a 9.1 degree angle. All right. And then on top of that, Charlie's clearly slumping over. So if it goes in here, it's going at an angle through the body. So it's probably more like 7 or 8 inches before it actually hits.
Absolutely.
Bone. So I just wanted to kind of throw that in there as well, but carry on. Sorry.
Absolutely correct. So a bullet that is aligned with its sharp part might need only 60 meters per second to 120 meters per second to pierce human skin. A fragment that is mushroomed or that is flat or that is circular, that has not been designed to penetrate skin, it needs a much higher momentum. So a fragment that is completely disorganized or mushroom will need up to 220 meters per second to pierce skin. So mushrooming is also something to take into consideration here.
Yeah, and the other part of that I was getting to say that I was distracted by some comments over there. I don't know. I'll think of it in a minute.
While you're thinking of that, I'll say this. A lot of the tests that have been recreated by various people on YouTube shooting, everything from dead animal spines to pork shoulders, etc. They want me to believe that that's a perfect analog to a human body, which it clearly is not. I mean, it's dead. So at minimum, it's not hydrated. There's no blood flowing through it. The muscles in the skin become less elastic because they're not hydrated, all of those things. No. But if I then refer them to 100 photos that I've posted or that have been posted to my comments from hunters showing deer that they've shot with 30-06 and larger calibers with no exit wound, their reply is always, well, but yeah, that's a deer. That's not a human being. And so you can't possibly use that as evidence. And I say, okay, well, then what are we doing here? If you want me to perfectly recreate this study, then you want to stand in front of the bullet and let yourself be shot? That's really the only way to do it. Even a cadaver wouldn't be a perfect analog because it's not alive.
No, the only perfect analog would be Charlie Kirk himself. Everybody's bone density is different. Their muscle density is different. their BMI, like all of it is completely different.
Charlie was what, 30 years old. He was in good shape. He was 6'5". So, his skeleton is obviously larger and probably denser to a degree and thicker than mine, for example, because I'm not that tall and my frame isn't that large. He was a healthy person, drank a lot of water. He was in good shape, probably ate very well. So it's not like he had osteoporosis. He was probably above average, I would say, in terms of his bone density and, muscle density. He wasn't a bodybuilder or anything, but he was certainly in, reasonable shape. So it's unbelievable to me that anybody can take a look at that and say it's impossible for that to happen, especially people who just have no experience at all shooting anything, really. So what are we talking about?
So Snafu Magoo, you're completely wrong. Like, again, look, I don't take AI for anything. Like, AI answers are silly. That being said, even Grok, just going through and analyzing, I do think analyzing some of the statistics and some of the data out there that we can't go through is fairly good. But it's between 20 and 30%, somewhere between there. I've seen different answers from Grok depending on what information you feed it. But there's plenty of examples. And again, the most prolific example was Martin Luther King. He was shot at 65 yards. That's almost exactly half the distance of what Charlie Kirk was shot at. So we have a significant amount more energy. It did hit his jawbone, but it still lodged in his back, just like we saw. Like, I mean, everybody out there just saying it can't happen, or it's 1 in a million, it's winning the Powerball. No, it's probably more like 20%. It's like a 20% chance. And again, we still don't, and it may be more than that because we don't know anything about the ammo. We don't know what the projectile is. We don't know what the weight is. We don't know whether it was hand loads. We don't know whether it was some other specialty ammo, low recoil, tumble upon impact. Like, everything that you would need to know to even sort of predict a terminal ballistic outcome, which is almost impossible to predict no matter what you're shooting. We don't know any of that stuff. Right. So, I mean, ultimately, some of this stuff, and I don't even know if that information will end up coming out in the trial. I hope it does, because I would like to be able to test some of that information out.
Yeah, I think people have watched too much CSI Las Vegas, and they think that, Gil Grissom shows up and he puts a laser pointer in the wall, and then they dig the somehow perfectly intact slug out of the bricks, and then they are able to get a fingerprint match on it and all this stuff. And it's like, guys, the likelihood that the bullet is in one piece is extremely low. And will they be able to figure out exactly what type it was? Maybe. I mean, they have the case, and so we could probably narrow it down to the manufacturer. And, depending on what other ammunition he had in the firearm or on his person, we could probably make some assumptions. And I'm hoping that stuff like that comes out in trial, because I think it's the only way to shut these people up. Even then, I don't think, oh, well, the FBI planted it. That's what they want you to see. It's not real evidence. I mean, it's just going to go on and on and on and on. And it's really disheartening. And I think it's doing a massive disservice. To me, this is like, back, 10 years ago, when I had, a very close friend of mine who got involved into QAnon. And it was just, everything was, well, we got this secret signal, and well, just wait, this is going to come out. And it honestly destroyed his life. He lost almost all of his friends, lost his wife, lost his house. And I think there are a lot of people who are going to cling to this until the very end. They're going to fall into this sunk cost fallacy. And they believe that because some of these YouTubers were right about some other conspiracy, or they, found some document that proved some other event that happened, that they must know what the next event was. And you just don't know where to begin with them.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think we all agree here that there are, I say it every show, look, there are government conspiracies.
100%.
We know that. I do not trust the government. I have been anti-government on this channel from the beginning of it. I hate the regulation. I know Justin can appreciate. Look, we're ATF their ass off out here. Like, it's dumb, right? Like, I believe that I'm a 2A absolutist. Like, no question about it. You committed a felony, you get out of jail, I think you should have 2A rights. I do.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm sorry, but if you're safe enough to come out of prison after you've been removed from society, you are safe enough to get your constitutional rights. If you're not, let's put them back in prison. So, like, I've been consistent on all this stuff, but I'm also not dumb enough to do the this, then that, like, illogical fallacy. Like, it's just not logically even sound to say, oh, well, because JFK was killed by the government, so was Charlie Kirk. It's completely different. It's completely different circumstances. There are so many dissimilarities here. It's not funny. And the difference too is that, like, we got a lot more footage. There was 3,000 people there. Like, and also the reason that most people think that that JFK was shot is because by our government is because of the evidence. There was a round that hit above the overpass. There was another stray round that hit somebody and it actually hit a curb and actually injured somebody. Like, there's some evidence there. What we don't have is any evidence of an additional shooter. And when you're saying, hey, the government always lies, we should believe the internet, which lies a lot harder. And folks, think about all the different conspiracies that have been put out that have muddied this water to begin with. The palm gun theory, the exploding mic theory, the underground tunnel theory, the AI video theory. Like, all of these things that were BS to begin with, that wasn't put out by the government. That was put out by social media. And I do think, look, folks, I think this is a deep state. I think this is a conspiracy. This information operation is a conspiracy by the deep state to undermine not only what Charlie Kirk was trying to accomplish, but also ultimately the Trump administration. Do I have any? Is that pure conjecture? Yes. Is that pure speculation? Yes. But I just see an organized, from the very onset of this, they have exploited this situation and have turned it into an anti-government and an anti-Trump narrative from the beginning. And the next thing you know, it's also including the French and Israelis. And now we have a secret military operation going down in Arizona that Brian Harpole was. Like, make it make sense. Bring this stuff together. It's an incoherent nonsense, and that you're asking me to believe, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to believe BS. I'm just not. And you can go out there in your QAnon and Candace cult, whatever. I'm not doing it. I just won't play that game.
Yeah, I would say to those people, okay, I'll play your game. We'll follow along. Let's say that Tyler was not the shooter. It was not a 30-06. So then what? If he was shot, if he was shot with the palm gun or shot from the trap door, what cartridge was it? What cartridge at that close of a distance would cause that much damage and elastic deformation without
the energy transfer? The energy transfer was clearly. Right. I knew that was a high-powered rifle the moment it hit him.
Yeah, his whole back moves all the way from the top of his spine all the way to the mid-back. You can see the shockwave travel all the way down. So how was that done from a trapdoor underneath the ground? How did they shoot upward into his neck and cause a shockwave that moved from the top of the neck down to the middle of the back? How did that happen? The palm gun one, that's my favorite, because as somebody with, like 130 competitive shooting pistol matches, I mean, I know guys with $4,000 race guns that have taken a shot at a target 10 feet away and missed entirely, and we're totally sure that they hit it. So you're telling me that this guy had a palm gun, no sights at all, was standing like 20 feet away or something like that, and he's going to make this critical shot on a public figure. He's only got one try. He's got no sights, and he manages to hit this guy perfectly. Like, come on, guys, this is just insanity. These are people with absolutely no shooting experience whatsoever beyond, maybe having hunted a couple of times. They shot some ducks. They fired a few rounds at the indoor range at a paper target, and they think that gives them any kind of knowledge or width of experience on the variety of things that can happen with a projectile when it hits a non-homogeneous substance like a human body. It's crazy.
Yeah. On the body shockwave, I will add, I've been looking at skin resistance because people keep telling me that deers are not representative of human skin. That's the impression generally, because a deer skin or a horse skin feels very stiff, very strong. But actually, the pricking force to create a hole in human skin or in deer skin is almost the same. The deer just has a slightly higher resistance to pricking. It's on the range of 25 to 40 megapascal for a human, and it's on the range of 35 to 45 or 50 megapascals for the deer. So it's the same range. The deer is just slightly higher. The true difference between deer skin and human skin is the stiffness of the deer skin. If you massage a deer or a horse, you'll see you can't move the skin. It's like a solid block. Whereas if you massage a human hand, you can already see the stretching and the moving. The whole human body is ready to move and to detach the skin from the rest of our body. And that certainly contributed to the shockwave we've seen spreading through the chest. Now, that's a lot of energy that's lost from the bullet and that goes into body movement. And actually, the fact that the human skin is so malleable may have contributed to less energy for exit penetration.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because your average person would think that, well, because it's stiffer, it must be stronger. But of course, that's not true in the metal industry, for example. A heat-treated piece of metal may be stronger, but it also may be much more brittle as a result and crack much easier. Titanium, for example, can crack much easier than stainless steel in a lot of cases, even though it's much stronger in other properties. So just because something doesn't move as much doesn't mean, like, what's your definition of strong, right? Deer have stronger skin. Well, what are you talking about? Are you talking about, like you said, the amount of force it takes to pierce it? Are you talking about how much it will deform before it breaks or cracks?
Or abrasion resistance? Abrasion
resistance, precisely, exactly.
No, one good example we give is the comparison between concrete and metal. People will say concrete is super strong, but you can take a pen and you can literally chip out concrete from itself. So there's resistance to breaking, there's containment, and there's solidity to impacts that are stable when a block of concrete is over the ground and you tap on it. Very important to include this, because all of these ballistic gels, they are not wrapped in skin. And the human body is wrapped in skin. So it's very easy to chip off a ballistic gel piece. But wrap that in a solid skin that's ready to take some absorption, some shockwave, and you're going to have a very different situation.
Well, and again, you don't have muscles, you don't have ligaments, you don't have pockets of fluid, pockets of denser materials. Like, again, the ballistic gel is a consistent material. The human body is completely inconsistent. Folks, I don't know what to tell you. And like, if people don't have this conversation, if they're not willing to tell you, like, hey, number one, we're not here telling you that it was definitely a 30-06 round. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. I like, give me an alternative theory, give me another shooter, give me another rifle, and then we can take a look at that. So far, I haven't seen that. Like, if you say that's not true, you got to give me something else to believe that's backed with evidence that has at least as much evidence as the narrative, right? Let me tell you something. The only thing worse than the government narrative is the Candace narrative. It is 10 times worse. As a matter of fact, if you believe what she's putting out, it's just silly. I don't know what to say, because it doesn't make sense at all. Like, we got freaking French Foreign Legion running around the place. She said the National Guard was involved. Last night and the night before his episode was talking about how there was a secret meeting of special operators down at Fort Huachuca in Arizona. Like, it's dumb.
Don't forget about the Egyptian planes and all the. I think Candace said there's too many people wearing maroon shirts, and so she has, I guess, some kind of a study that shows in an average crowd of 3,000 people that we can predict how many men will show up wearing a maroon shirt, and that was out of the range of normal, and so that becomes a thing as well. It's like, guys, we can't get 2 or 3 countries to agree on anything. And so you're telling me that 3 or 4 different nations with entirely different agendas and motives and what have you all got together to murder Charlie fucking Kirk? I mean, I hate to say that way, but I mean, Charlie was obviously a big figure and an important person in the conservative movement, but you're telling me that all those countries got together and they didn't go shoot Trump or JD Vance or somebody, at the top of the totem pole?
And even if they did kill Charlie Kirk, there's so many different ways that would be so much easier. There would be less risk to them.
Yeah.
Like that none of it makes sense. And then Candace's reason was that, these 3 countries got together and colluded to kill Charlie Kirk so that she would stop investigating Brigitte Macron. I know.
I've been super hesitant to criticize Candace because I like that she's asking questions, and I would like if we could be mature about it and treat them as questions. Unfortunately, in the environment of disinformation, there's a lot of people drawing conclusions about it.
Well, and JF, I completely agree with you. If she was just asking questions, this conversation wouldn't be taking place right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not. I used to like Candace Owens, and I've watched plenty of things that she's done, and I certainly would never poo-poo anybody for asking questions. And unfortunately, that's what they always refer back to is, well, you don't want me to ask questions, and my answer is always, I want you to ask better questions. I want you to think about your questions logically and play them out, run the scenarios, make yourself a decision tree, and just run the numbers and the percentages. You have an equation with 20 moving parts. I mean, just the shot itself, if we want to get back to that, there's, say 12 or 14 different variables in this math equation, A times B times C times D, so on and so forth. And so every time you have to assume or estimate one of those values because you don't know what the original value was, you make the equation more inaccurate. And so if you do it that way, you're going to have to rerun that equation thousands, maybe tens of thousands of times to get all the various possibilities that could possibly exist because there's just so many variables. And so, on the conspiracy theory side, the more variables you add, the more people that were involved, the more connections have to be made, the more implausible it becomes just simply by nature of variability.
It's fascinating how just the ballistic question, if you solve this, you remove a lot of useless conspiracy theories that are not productive directions of research.
Correct.
This is why people need to be able to focus. I would love if all of the energy of the internet was removed from the ballistic doubting and put into, go ahead, research your Egyptian planes and tell us what they did. Tell us who they are.
Right.
Yeah. And here's my problem ultimately with Candace and why I'm still doing this and why I've been going hard at Candace lately is because, number one, again, I do think this is a misinformation operation. And I do think there's personal reasons behind it. But here's a couple things that I pointed out. If Candace was genuine, especially with the money and resources that she had, because right now her investigation methods, this is what her investigation methodology includes. Never go into the location or even leaving the studio. She doesn't interview any eyewitnesses. She never has on any experts in relevant fields. Never has had a lawyer on to talk about the case and the strengths and weaknesses of that. Relies on mommy sleuths for intel and never shows proof of anything. None of that is an investigation. And I'm sorry, but I find it nonsense at this point. And I think as Americans, we shouldn't let this metastasize, which we have. Because she started out, I heard her at the beginning, I left it alone. I was only interested in debunking, number one, trying to find out what was going on, but like the palm gun, let's debunk that just so we can get rid of that. Because if we're going to find out the truth, it requires a process of elimination of these distractions. And if we can make people think about what's going on, with some critical thinking skills, then like maybe we can get to the truth. But the Egyptian planes and like all this stuff, this adventure that she's taken us on with zero evidence is just a distraction from the truth. And that's my problem with this stuff, is I don't think it's, at this point, I've had enough. And like, you know, I've had enough. And I think it's damaging to the, look, truth is the soul of our nation. And when our government is lying to us, I've been consistent and called that out. I called out the whole COVID-19 thing. I've talked about that at length. I talked about January 6th at length. I've talked about, you name it. But right now, the lies that I have to call out are Candace Owens, and every American should. And the other thing that I have a real problem with is that her accusations they're not benign. Like, they destroy people's lives. Like, when you're telling these people, like Turning Point USA is getting death threats, their security team is getting death threats. A lot of people are getting death threats nonstop. I just talked to, everybody knows, there was a photographer off on the right side of Charlie, facing Charlie off to the right side. There was a bunch of photos from him. His name is Andrew. We'll have him on Sunday. A bunch of people out of the blue. One of those people was Jimmy Dore, was saying that he was one of the gunmen.
Right.
And this is an innocent dude that was hired by TPUSA to do camera stuff. He was a local. And that guy's life has been destroyed, getting death threats and everything else. We're going to have him on Sunday. He's going to tell his story, what happened, and all those things. So, like, these are not innocent questions. These are and that's the other thing that really irritates me. It's the innuendo. It's the insinuation. Never quite brave enough to actually accuse somebody. And really what it is you're afraid of being sued. But she leads people to the conclusion that she wants you to have without ever actually having to say it. Because if you look down the comments, all of her people are completely convinced. She never actually accused them. No, but she led you to that conclusion. And that's what's so dishonest. It's slimy politician garbage behavior. And I'm done pretending that it's okay in the United States.
Yeah, I think her and Ian Carroll, they take no responsibility for the fact that they have very large platforms, and they mobilize those platforms very quickly. You know, I've been going back and forth with Ian Carroll for the last 2 days on X, and you know, I'm not afraid of anybody. Like, I think, you know, he's maybe figured out that he picked the wrong guy. I'm not afraid of him at all.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, I have people accusing me of being a Fed plant. I have people saying that I'm getting paid by Israel to do this. I have people that have left a bunch of 1-star reviews on our Google profile. And I'm not afraid of any of that. All of that has been obviously debunked. We're not really losing any business from it, but we could. And I'm sure that would happen to a lot of other businesses. He just happened to pick the wrong one. I mean, I have people trying to claim that I'm Jewish. I actually had my mother text me photos from my baptism and my first communion and my confirmation, just in case I had to deploy it. And it's like, I can't even believe I'm doing that. You know, luckily, you know, I'm easy to find. If anybody wants to show up at my house, I highly recommend you don't. But I'm not afraid of that, and I have no problem doing that. So I kind of am sort of happy that I've taken up this mantle, because I don't think anybody else wants to do it, because they don't want to suffer the wrath of you know, Candace and Ian and some of these other people in her cadre. I mean, I actually just looked back in my Twitter history. I did a Spaces on this on September 22nd. Quick comments on the magic bullet theory. I talked about it for almost 10 minutes. And I happened to be sitting in my garage, and I just said, I can't deal with this anymore. I have all these people who are saying this is impossible and it couldn't have been this. And I hashed some of this stuff out. Hey guys, we don't know anything about the bullet. Let's all just kind of calm down and relax. Let's wait until more information comes out. And of course, now here we are. It's December 11th. We don't have any more information, but we're still talking about it. And that's because it's basically the linchpin of the entire case. As you said, you know, everything relies on, if this could actually be proven that this bullet came from this trajectory, and this was exactly the bullet, and this was the mode of how it damaged his body and all that, if that could be proven to 100% certainty, then all of these conversations about it, foreign governments and Egyptian planes and all this would be over.
I don't think it would. No,
you're right. It may not be, but I think it would hamper it immensely. I would hope.
Again, this podcast and just about everything we do here, folks, we're not going to change the people that are now indoctrinated into believing what they believe. All right. All of this media and this content is for the reasonable among us, which, by the way, we get a little bit of, I don't know, we get myopic for those of us that are constantly on social media. I don't care if 90% of what we see on Twitter is pushing these narratives, these alternative narratives and alternative theories. I don't even like to call them conspiracy theories, but that's not the real world. All right. And people are looking for answers still, and people are still confused. Folks, if you haven't done so already, I just put the link in the chat. Go watch this podcast we did last night with Andrea Burkhart. She's a defense attorney. She goes through the entire charging documents. She talks about the ideas of some of these things being fabricated, how the defense would handle that and find that out very easily. So anyways, if you really care about knowing the facts of this case and how strong this case is against Tyler Robinson, go watch it. She's a defense attorney. She's literally, I jokingly called her pro-criminal last night. She's not pro-criminal, but that's her job, is to look at the weaknesses of a case and get this person off. And she goes through this very well. She's extremely articulate, easy to listen to. So if you haven't watched that, go watch it. It's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, it's strange.
I've been extremely.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I've been extremely disappointed by Jan Carroll, because I made a whole video of 1 hour to explain the argument, because he was asking for what is the argument that Tyler Robinson could have shot with the 30-06. I made a whole hour video. It went 300K views. Everyone was telling him, engage with it. He didn't engage with it at all. He just said, this is a guy with a French accent, and I don't care what he says. It's ridiculous. This looks like an operation meant to fool people, to gather the most views possible, instead of, if he was truly interested in the search for truth, if someone was questioning my work, I would spend the whole night, 4-hour live stream, answering every point, but he doesn't care.
Right. And you're not even really French. You're French Canadian, so it's not even accurate. It's very similar to argument. I mean, I'm no stranger to these kinds of arguments, because I've been doing this for the last 10 plus years with people in the anti-gun crowd. And it's so funny how similar, I actually tweeted something a little bit earlier. All extremism looks like a horseshoe in the end. And they end up making basically the same arguments. So the anti-gun people will say, well, if we can just stop every death, and if we just take all the guns, and they just keep throwing out all these well, what if we could do that? What if we could do this? And, and it's like, guys, at some point you're just talking to somebody who isn't listening. And it may be because they're legitimately not intelligent enough to think critically. I actually think that we underestimate the amount of people in this country that don't have the ability to think logically and put things together. I grew up my father's an engineer. We were building projects and doing all kinds of things when we were very young, science projects and stuff of that nature. So I learned the scientific method in 3rd grade. And I just don't really think that happens anymore. And unfortunately, you can get on Twitter, and because you have access to the entire world and you have 1.3 million followers, you assume that those people all have the ability to think critically. And I just don't think that that's the case at all.
Yeah. And last time that I checked, I don't have a French accent, and I have Ian Carroll's phone number. All right. I have a whole bunch of texts here. Hey, Ian, let's get together. He's like, hey, yo, Gary, it's pretty, November 6th, been a pretty busy week. Basically, hey, let's get together and talk about our differences, blah, blah, blah. That was November 6th. I responded to it. Hey, let's do that. I sent him another text on November 22nd, and he's welcome here. Look, I'm not going to be I'm not going to be an asshole. I do think, and I would treat them respectfully, just like I have with everybody else that I've had on here that I've debated, or let them give their side of the story, which I've done that multiple times on this platform. People that I completely disagree with, hey, come on. I want you to present your argument on my platform. I disagree with your argument. I want you to present it. The people can decide. And we had a respectful, friendly back and forth. Look, at this point, the only thing that I can conclude with Ian Carroll and many other folks is they're so vested in a narrative they can't back out now. They're going to be on the look. We see the trajectory where everybody's waking up to the nonsense of all this. And yeah, you know what? We're going to have the trial. A bunch of evidence is going to come out. There's still going to be people talking about how all the evidence is contrived, that the defense attorney team are in on it, that the FBI analysts are in on it, the fingerprint people are in on it, all of the Utah authorities are in on it, the local, state, and federal police are in on it. All of these people are in on it, but it's still going to have, like, once your credibility is gone, it's gone. And that's all I can say. Let's get to some questions, and we'll kind of go through this real quick. Thank you for becoming a member. Folks, if you want to support this channel, become a member. Oh, and by the way, folks, down in the description below, we have social media links to both Justin, Fenix Ammunition, and JF. So you guys go give them a follow and, support them.
Hey, real quick, JF, I got a message from a female friend of mine. She says she's not buying your theory on skin elasticity until you give her a personal massage. So
is she's single? I am available. I'm available. She should send me a DM.
Where in Canada are you?
I'm in Alberta, and I can fly her in. But I practice. I am a radical guy. I practiced immediate insemination. That's.
Oh, you're breaking up, JF. You're breaking up. I don't know what happened. Yeah. You're breaking up. All right, we'll get this back on the rail. 30-06, more like 30 minutes or less. I don't know quite what that means. Shout out to Fenix Ammo. Ian Carroll is a Alabama, I think that says. Thanks for the YouTube membership there. This one wasn't a super chat, but it says, can we stick to the strong manning the other side? I don't know exactly what.
I think that's a good practice. It means to grant the best vision. What is your best vision of Candace?
JF, I know what it means literally. What I'm saying, thank you for that explanation, though. I appreciate that. What I'm saying is, like, all we've heard is the strongman argument.
I think if I could give any commentary on, well, hey, this is weird. I do think, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And so what we're seeing is a big part of the conspiracy is that somehow Israel was involved. Okay. And so as a result, now you have, without really getting too deep into the weeds here, it seems as if, TPUSA and Erica Kirk and people on that side are trying to make sure that the world knows that Charlie Kirk was not about to ditch his support for Israel. And so I think TPUSA is unfortunately taking that too far in the other direction. And I'm not saying maybe they're lying and maybe they're over-aggrandizing his opinion to a degree and trying to play it up too much because they're seeing so much rancor from the other side that he was about to denounce Israel. And so I think they're going the opposite tack and saying, okay, well, now we need to make it abundantly clear that Charlie was 200% in support of Israel. And I would say that does maybe seem a little bit weird. And so, but you have two, that could have absolutely nothing to do with who killed him and why they killed him.
Well, I'll even push back on that just a little bit, Justin, because when Candace came out with those texts, and they'd already been talking about it, and Charlie himself had already, like, I was following Charlie all the time. Like this didn't just happen. Like a lot of these people, by the way, like all of a sudden, oh, Charlie's a really interesting character. Let me see what's going on. Like I've been following Charlie Kirk for a really long time. And he was already expressing discontent with the Israeli government and or the way that they were prosecuting the war in Gaza. I agree with him.
Sure.
And by the way, I was completely, and I still am. I'm indifferent to Israel. I really don't care about Israel. I think there is a good conversation to have, to not only have, talking about money going to other countries, support, political influence. We've talked a lot about AIPAC. Let's also talk about CARE. There's a bunch of political and foreign influences in this country that we have a discussion. But Andrew Colvett came out and said, yes, we had been having those conversations that basically Charlie wasn't nearly as supportive as Israel. Even if he cut off his support of Israel altogether, and Israel lost one of their biggest ambassadors, if you will, in the United States, that doesn't make sense that they would kill him. Like you don't think that Israel is, Jews are 0.02% of the population, but apparently they're smart enough to run the entire world. You don't think that they would be smart enough to say, hey, this is going to have a blowback effect on us that would be much worse because everyone's going to know that we killed Charlie Kirk and it's going to have the negative impact that we want. So that was well known. It wasn't even being covered up. And Andrew Colvett, he talked about that immediately. So I hear what you're saying, but it still doesn't make sense to me, that argument overall.
In terms of strong manning, in academic culture, we keep yelling at each other. We keep criticizing each other. And when you reach the highest level labs in the academia, it's all people who are making themselves better because they are critical to the max of each other.
No, this is a great point. And this is something that has not happened at all in this conversation. For that point, because I'm not so ego-driven that I don't think that I could be missing things. That's why I constantly wanted this conversation going on and to build this coalition of people that see things differently, that disagree, so that we can steel man one another, and then we can sanity check one another, and then we can have good faith discussions so that when I'm not seeing someone else's perspective, they can persuade me, and vice versa. But that's not allowed. You can't have an alternative. You can't have an alternative opinion. The alternative theory side has now become the orthodoxy, and anything when you say, hey, you know what, evidence says X, Y, and Z, now you're outside of that, right? You're a heretic. So Jay Hernandez says it's more probable Tyler used hand-packed rather than using questionable old ammo for the event of his life. I don't think that's more probable at all. He could have used hand-loaded ammo. Folks, I'm telling you right now, his grandfather, his dad could have had 30-year-old ammo sitting on the shelf. That is very common, especially with something. The 30-06 was one of the most ubiquitous calibers in the country, coming probably from the 40s through the early 80s. There's lots of people out there with 30-06 and ammo sitting around, and there's no telling. We don't know. It's all speculation at the end of the day. Would you agree with that, Justin?
Yeah, absolutely. The funny thing is we have a lot of data on, 30-aughts. How many people were killed in World War II with 30-06, right? Several 100,000 probably at a minimum. Obviously, you can't look at the overall deaths and know, because a lot of that's artillery and what have you. But, at a minimum, several 100,000. Can we agree on that? And so you're telling me that if somehow I was able to dig up the corpses of everybody that we killed in World War II with 30-06, that every single one of those bodies would have an exit wound when they were shot in the neck, get the fuck out of here, guys. You don't understand the law of large numbers. I don't know how else to say it.
and again, ammo does do weird shit. Our last long range course, we had a guy there. He was shooting 6 Creedmoor, and every 20th round or so would go out of his barrel 30 feet in front of the barrel. It would explode. That round would just completely fall apart. So, there's imperfections. We've gotten and that was match grade modern ammunition. It was Hornady ELDs. So it's good ammunition. It's the best there is, and we still have variances and problems with that ammunition. You don't think ammo from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago doesn't have those types of defects? It does, and especially like even store-bought ammo today, if you're not buying match grade, like the tolerances aren't what they are for the higher end ammo. I mean, those are just facts. Thank you for becoming a member, David. How do we debunk the surgeon's story, given it's a legal document? Well, it's not a legal document, and I don't think that's actually in any legal documents. That was a secondhand story. It's hearsay, is what it was.
Yeah. Let me go back and actually add to that. Yeah. So,
Sure.
Guys are saying, well, he had a miracle neck, and the doctor said it was a miracle. And my answer is, was that in a medical report? Did he write that in a medical report? Because if not, what that sounds to me,
miracle neck.
Yeah, what that sounds to me is like, let's flip it around. Let's say Charlie Kirk had survived, right? What would the doctor say? Well, this was a miracle. I've seen 1,000 people get shot in the neck, and none of them have ever survived. So Charlie must have had God looking down on him. He had a spine as strong as steel. And so would you have conspiracy people talking about this in the other way? Well, it must have been a conspiracy because everybody dies when they get shot. So the fact that he survived means that this wasn't real, and it was a blood pack. And this was all, just like they said about Trump getting shot in the ear, this was all staged, and this was all to, get a bunch of donations for TPUSA. So again, if you've never talked to a doctor who's having a conversation with somebody who's grieving,
completely off the record, like
that they won't embellish a little bit, and say, hey man, it's lucky that Charlie's spine was so strong, because God forbid the bullet could have gone all the way through him and hit somebody behind him. I mean, that's like not verbatim what he said, but something
that was
like
the intent. That was the intent.
Yeah. And so like he's making his friend feel better about the fact that his friend was just murdered on live TV, and now he has to deal with that for the rest of his life. I mean, guys, this is just insanity. They take the human element completely out of the equation, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible to me.
Barande 1, thank you, sir. Would the etchings cause more of a corrosion? I would imagine that it defects the whole bullet, or could it cause off-kilter firing from the start? Like as far as we understand, what we're talking about is he was etching into the brass itself, right? The casing. Now, what we don't know is if he did anything to the projectile too. We don't know anything. That could have caused an issue right there. That could have, if he has etchings on one side of that projectile, that is going to cause it to be completely unbalanced. And now we're going to have a bullet that is yawing even more as it's, going down range at freaking 20,000 RPMs. So like, we don't know what happened to it. And this is kind of the point. And he very well could have, and by the way, yes, it would cause some inconsistency. We spend a lot of money on brass. I got a bunch of Lapua brass over there and some other expensive brass. Like, we want uniformity in our brass. And when we artificially, it's going to cause some variation. Anything you want to add to that, Justin?
Not really. I mean, as you said, the variation, even in powder, powder has a different burn rate in different temperatures, like we're getting into the minutia here, but, all these people that are trying to replicate tests, do you have the right temperature? Do you have the right barometric pressure, the right humidity? I mean, we have a climate controlled factory for that reason, because the powder flows different through the machines when the humidity is too low or too high, and it causes variation. So, your average off-the-shelf ammunition made by a high-volume manufacturer, if you shoot that over a chronograph in perfect conditions, you will see sometimes 150 feet per second variance from cartridge to cartridge in ideal conditions, simply due to variations in the powder, the seated length, all these things. I mean, I hate to tell people this, but the ammunition industry is a dinosaur in many ways. And that's what led me to get into this. I spent 10 years working with manufacturers who were making aerospace parts and all kinds of things. And then I looked at the gun industry and I said, these guys are 30 years behind the times. None of their quality control is automated. They're doing
Oh shoot!
cases. I mean, it's
Oh.
atrocious.
Sorry.
And so, you guys, people think that every cartridge is exactly identical, and yeah, with good manufacturing practices, you can get them to be very close to identical, but that's not how most of the industry works. It's just not.
And at the end
I
of
would
the day,
add-
the when they're doing these tests, the two things they don't have that gun and they don't have that ammo, and that's without adding the other 1,000 variables that you just kind of laid out. Go ahead.
I would
Jeff.
add, even if the etchings themselves didn't change the projectile trajectory, the handling, he's put his hands on the projectiles for sure. Was there fat? Did he have his hands dirty? Did he introduce humidity that eventually worked into corroding the projectile? All of this is possible.
Yeah, and again, we don't know if that ammunition had been sitting in his grandfather's father's basement for the last 20 years. We don't know what it was exposed to. We don't know how it was kept. We don't know the condition of it. I mean, all those things play a factor. What we do know, or at least I think it's very reasonable to assume, is that round hit either about 10 inches high or 10 inches low. So, he was either aiming for his chest, which is what I think, and I think it ended up hitting high. He was shooting at an angle, which is exactly what will take place. That round will actually end up higher because gravity, all right, and just high angle shooting. I did calculate that out. It should have been about an inch and a half difference. If he was zeroed in at 140 yards, adding that 10-degree angle downward, it would actually hit about an inch and a half high. Now, I don't know what he had that gun zeroed at. We don't know his fundamentals of marksmanship. He might have jerked the trigger. Like, we don't know. Like, that's the problem. Again, I showed this earlier, but I want to give her special recognition. Captain Jack, thank you very much for the $50. Retired 30 years LE, 20 years homicide detective. I've seen projectiles do crazy things. Some bounce around, damage organs with no exit wounds, some with minimal damage. You just never know. Also, you do an excellent job explaining everything. Thank you. Well, thank you, Captain Jack. We appreciate you in the audience. Disney up, boiler up. Always good to see you, girl. Hi, Gary. Shout out to the mods for dealing with all the crazy shit in the chat. Yes, I know. Thank you. Thank you, folks. I tested some 25-year-old 30-06 ammo, minor corrosion. I offered you via email, and I had dirty barrel. 3 of the 10 were keyholing 4 inches off target at 100 yards. Folks, if that round is keyholing, it is almost guaranteed. And what that means is that projectile has now turned oblique to the target. All right, that projectile is not going to exit. So there's no telling. Again, it's speculative. But what I can tell you for sure is that the idea that it's impossible is just silly. No one found her yet, JF. I don't know.
This is my ex who has disappeared. Oh. No, she has not been found yet. She disappeared in 2023.
Oh, dear God.
But I am raising our children as a single dad, and I enjoy life, and I honor our life through the raising of my children.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Glad you're doing right by your
problem.
Kid. Thank you, CJ. CJ's the man. He's the guy that paid for all the 3D artwork, all the stuff that wasn't in that we couldn't provide, which was, Charlie himself, the tents, all those things. I mean, tens of thousands of dollars went into that. So CJ is a hero behind the scenes. Gary Shaver, I swear I would never watch Candace. Unfortunately, Gary forced me to the video he did. Thanks for absolutely proving why I would never watch her. You're welcome. Ask JF what happened to Marna JF. I guess that's your ex.
Well, yeah, she was a party girl. She went away. She traveled to another province, and she was also a government resistance type of lady. And she told me, I'm about to disappear. You'll never hear from me again, while being in a different province than me. And she did it. She disappeared. We don't know what happened. The police never found her. Is she living somewhere secret, hiding from the government, or is she dead? Was she captured, killed? We don't know.
Thank you very much for becoming a YouTube member. People who have deep hatred against any specific group of people aren't interested in dialogue. I agree with that. And that is definitely one of the problems. Anybody is welcome to come on this show. I will treat them with respect. I will talk to them like a friend, no matter how much I disagree with them. I will not call them names. Candace herself can come on the show. I will tell her that I think she's lying. I will tell her that I think she's being dishonest. I will tell her that I think she's delusional, but I will be extremely respectful to her, and we can talk about the facts that she has, the evidence that she has or doesn't have. Ian's welcome to come on. Nate is always welcome to come on from VFT, all those things. The only question that really matters for JF and Justin, do either one of you put peanut butter on French toast?
I never have. I might. I'm more of a French toast purist. You know, I use maple syrup, and that's about it. But I wouldn't be opposed to it.
The problem
maple
with
syrup, or if you want something original, creton, which is ground pork and onion. That's delicious.
I'm out. I gotta go. That's worse than poutine, brother. I can't do that.
I have shot guided 500 plus big game. It wasn't a 30-06. All right, cool. Doesn't mean anything to me, man. Please learn CPR. It works. I would say CPR is important. Traumatic injury response, how to stop bleeding, is much more important. It's 10 times. Like we are an NAEMT certified training company. We teach TCCC, TECC. People come to me. They're like, Gary, I want to start shooting guns. What's the first thing I should learn? You need to come to one of our medical courses.
Yeah, you got to know how a tourniquet works.
Yeah, you know how a tourniquet works. Got to know how to pack wound. You got to know a lot of things. So go get some training in that. CPR's good. Super sticker. All right, we'll get to some lives here just for a few more minutes, and then we will go along the way. Lay says it'd be easier to list what she hasn't lied about. She said she'd shut up if Erica asked, didn't, shared a crop video of TR before he said vehicle to pretend he didn't say that, and some of the other things that I've pointed out, some of the inconsistencies for sure. There's that. I'm trying to find some Gary hate ones or disagreements. I don't know what that really means. I don't know what this is. Gary, bully Candace, really dog, better prep. I don't know what that means. Sure.
I think he's trying to say that if you bully Candace, you better prepare yourself for the wrath. I mean, I really think that's what he says. And I think these people really believe that. I think that they really believe that people can be dogpiled and bullied by big YouTube and conservative personalities, because that's kind of how things have gone for the last couple of years. Yeah. But I think that's changing rapidly.
It's not going to work with me. You know what? Every time that I have the thousands of people, the Candace cult, come to my X account, especially, and my YouTube, you know what it just tells me? It tells me I'm over the target. I'm clearly over the target.
Right.
So my feels and vibes are being confirmed. Qatar funds billions of our universities to indoctrinate and brainwash college students, hide Hamas leaders. They aren't ally. I mean, sure, they do. So do communist nations, China. Russia was doing it for many, many years during the Cold War, probably still are doing it. Many other. Look, this whole divisive discussion that's going on with this, number one, it's happening because of the government. All right. The government has failed to have any integrity. They've lied to us. They've deceived us many times. That being said, every other country and all the different adversarial political actors within this country understand that. They understand that the conservative party, they're very aware that the conservative party is ripe for misinformation. And I think they're feeding a lot of this. And it's working. It's working better than I think anybody ever imagined it would. I think for sure because of this, we are going to lose the midterms, which is a real problem. And then it could even potentially run to 2028. So everything that Charlie did, the conservative movement and revival that he created, after, he was shot, he was killed for like 3 days. We all came together, and then all of this nonsense started. And we're more divided than ever before, and it's a real shame. And that's why I'm on here, and I'm not going to stop until we bring a little bit of common sense to all this. It's super important. So you believe Charlie told 3 people at least within 24 hours of death that he thought they were going to kill him at U of U, and you think he was referring to Tyler Robinson? Nope. So first of all, this is unconfirmed nonsense. It's unconfirmed. And he could have, as a matter of fact, Erica came out today and said this is not true. All right. So there's that. Like, and that's the problem, is like everybody has taken these hearsay and speculation and turned it into fact. I don't know if this is true or not. Even if it is true, Charlie had been talking out against the trans movement for many years. Like, go watch all of his university prove me wrong debates. Like 80% of them are trans and LGBTQ people coming up there to challenge him on different things with that. So there was a lot of hatred for him in that. And I mean, if you want to use Occam's razor, let's apply it correctly here. Like, he was speaking out against trans. Maybe he said someone was going to kill him. Doesn't mean that it was Israel or the French or like, and here's the thing. Even if he thought Israel was going to kill him, like, how did the French get involved? Like, where did the Marine shirts people come from? Like, where do the National Guard come into play? Where does the secret operation that was being planned down in Arizona come to play? Like, the Egyptian planes that were following him when he loved Israel and was their biggest advocate. Like, it does none of, like, bring it all together for me. Like, and then on top of that, just give me an alternative. Like, you're telling me all these people are involved. Okay, how was Charlie killed? You got to give me something else with some evidence. I have no evidence that this was actually said. I have no evidence that Israel was involved. I have no evidence that French was involved. I have no evidence of this operation down in Arizona. But you want me to believe that for stuff that I have a lot of physical evidence for? I'm not doing it. Paramount's, I said before about ELD and ELDX disintegration and impact, as well as cup and core bullets. This is fact, especially ELD and ELDX if shot at close range. Hornady even says, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of known inconsistencies with ammo, and, you know, it is what it is. Not a member of any cult. All cult members say that. Having a missing loved one is one of the worst things to ever happen. Spending the rest of your life wondering. I'm sure it is.
Absolutely.
This chat compared to the anxiety-inducing Candace chat, so refreshing. Well, good.
It's true that the followers of Candace, there's something special about them. They are extremely high-strung.
What do you think about the Egyptian planes? Very suspicious. Gary doesn't even talk about it. I have talked about it on like every episode. We just did a whole podcast the other night about it. Like, I don't know what you people are saying. I just saw another one that was funny. I've talked about it many times, and I've watched most of the episodes where she covers the Egyptian planes. Like, it's incoherent. Like, okay, so these Egyptian planes were following Erica around. Why use the most expensive way possible? Like, do you understand how sophisticated Israel is? Like, and is that that's the undertone. I don't quite think it's ever said, but you know, these Egyptian planes are actually Israeli planes. Like, do you know how sophisticated electronic surveillance is and how you can track somebody through all kinds of different software that you put on their computers, that you put on their phones? Like, it makes no sense that these people will be following them around. And then how does that relate to the Charlie Kirk assassination? You haven't explained that to me either.
Personally, I've been calling it an interesting hypothesis, and I've said, go ahead, Candace, dig this, and perhaps it's important. But at this point, we don't have any indication that it's related. We need more.
I agree. Poutine is great. I don't know about the peanut butter and French toast thing.
Yes, poutine is great. If you don't like poutine, it's because you haven't tasted it at the right place.
Okay, well, I'm not that far from Windsor, so tell me where I got to go.
You would have to go to La Banquise in Montreal with 150 different recipes of poutine.
I went to Montreal one time, maybe 10 years ago. I was there for a jiu-jitsu competition, and I was cutting weight for like a week before that.
Oh, yeah.
It was absolutely fucking miserable. We weighed in, and I went to go get food, and all the menu was in French, and I was so angry, I almost lost my mind. I couldn't believe it. 10 out of 10 would not do again.
Yeah. This question right here says, why were they in Utah? Well, I don't know. And Candace hasn't said that either. What I will say that's in Utah is Duncan Aviation is in Provo, Utah. Do you know what Duncan Aviation does? They do interior refurbishment and customization of Gulfstream jets. They do exterior paint. They do avionics upgrades. They do airframe and engine services. So that's another problem that I have with Candace and her ilk is she presents this thing, she turns it into this really suspicious element, but then she never offers an alternative, more probable alternative explanation, or at least just objectively, like the honest thing to do is say, okay, they could be Egyptian planes and they could have something to go here. But by the way, what just happens to be in Provo, Utah too, is Duncan Aviation, where they refit Gulfstreams. So, I mean, that's just an honest thing to provide your viewers as an alternative explanation. Same guy says you can't knock her for bringing suspicious actors during Charlie's death. Okay, that's fine, but don't just suggest that they're like, because somebody acts weird during a traumatic event that they weren't expecting, that all you people sit back there and do the hindsight 2020 Monday morning quarterbacking thing. Like, I wouldn't have done that. You have no clue what you would do in the middle of a shooting and seeing somebody killed and all these things. Like, and then to take that and then turn that weird behavior into, oh, they must be in on it. That is an illogical leap. That is the stuff of children. I mean, it really is. It's what kids do that aren't able to think objectively at all.
Yeah, do the work, collect the evidence, and then state your case. But what's happening is Candace is using the platform to just point into the crowd and say, get him, and let everybody else just dogpile and dox and call their parents and show up at their house and all these things that don't actually produce any evidence at all. So what's the point of it? The point of it is just to garner attention and to move on to the next thing and to have something to talk about on the show the next day. And, you know, that's the problem with monetization in a lot of ways, is it rewards not, you know, intelligence and critical thinking, but it rewards popularity and impressions and shock value. And, you know, that's why police shooting videos will always get more clicks and more likes than a video of somebody, you know, painting a beautiful picture or, you know, knitting a sweater or something like that. It's nonsense.
Yeah. Well, and the other problem is they come to a conclusion at the front of it, and then they try to find evidence to support that conclusion, and they end up empty, but they stick with that evidence. They stick with that conclusion, whether there's evidence for it or not. There's no logic in that methodology. Unzapped TV says, my audio analysis proves there cannot be a shot closer than 118 yards, no matter the caliber. All right. We've seen multiple audio analysis that say differently. And I will also tell you that there is so many different variables in an audio analysis. And I know this from Butler and having talked to like 5 or 6 different companies that's what they do. All right. I talked to them a lot during the Butler assassination, or the attempted assassination on Trump. Hours on the phone with multiple, all of these companies that do audio analysis of some sort. 3 of them actually did audio analysis forensically for government agencies. They all had the same data, and they all were coming to different conclusions using the same data. So, and there's some variance in there, and part of that is assuming number one, the muzzle velocity, among other things. So there's just a lot of room for error in audio analysis, period. So you can take that for what it's worth.
Again, I think that just goes back to people people really have watched too much CSI, and they see, well, we have the audio analysis, and well, that means that audio analysis can be done and that they're admissible in court and they're always correct. And if there's anything good that can come out of this, it will be that people will realize just how much pseudoscience is involved in forensic science as a whole. I know this personally. I worked with a local university here in the Detroit area to do some forensic analysis. They were trying to determine if they could narrow down the brand and type of powder used based on gunshot residue on clothing and what have you. And so we loaded up 7 or 8 different brands and types of powder in 9mm, and we fired them at targets from various distances. And he really wasn't able to get much usable data. I mean, he had like 200 targets by the time we were done. And he wasn't really able to get much usable information to discern the differences between them at all. So I think people really overestimate what science can do when it comes to gunshots in particular.
And people are pointing out in the chat that the super chat was correct. He was saying it was therefore more than 118 yards. And I think that the audio analysis have been good. They have been good, but they are always subject to uncertainty because of the ultimate assumption you have to do. Unless you have a record of another sound event that you could have normalized to something to link your audio and video streams, that's what leads to variance.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I misunderstood that. He's basically saying it couldn't be closer than 118 yards. But again, I put, after that whole experience talking to real professionals doing analysis, like I think there's a little bit of voodoo involved with the audio analysis. It's just not conclusive data in my mind. Oh crap, I lost it. We had that guy talking about some sort of no socks rumor from me or something. I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. Gary with no socks. The chat just keeps moving on me. So anyway, oh, here we go. Says, sorry guys, but until Gary addresses the no socks rumor head on, I don't know how anyone can trust him. Maybe it's just me, but it's not natural. I wear socks every day. I don't actually like walking around. I do try to get out in the morning and walk around, do a little grounding because I'm half hippie. Not really, but I do believe in grounding. So take that for what it's worth. The Egyptian government has a working relationship with BYU, which is in Provo. BYU is an Egyptology program and does work in Egypt. Okay, there's that. I don't know. Like I don't know. There may be it may be nefarious. There may be something crazy about it, but I haven't heard, like, just because something exists, you got to give me something more than that. She's married to a very powerful family. Do you honestly think the House of Lords appreciates her peel more layers? I don't know. I don't understand what you're trying to say there. Yeah, look, I mean, the entire TPUSA folks are all getting death threats and everything else. Like it's they lost. Here we go. Okay, this is literally not the use of Occam's razor. Occam's razor equal ultra-Zionist billionaire donors fed up with Charlie after 2 years asking too many uncomfortable questions and ultimately threatening to leave them. Then he died 2 days later. Seems like an awful short amount of time to put together an operation. That's okay. I'm so sick of Occam's razor being said and being used the opposite of Occam's razor that it's like the word Zionist. I'm just sick of it. Occam's razor. There was actually 3 shooters and they were hiding in here and they used, this guy shot 1 round, you know, he was the patsy, and then they actually used a subsonic round from a completely different location. Occam's razor. Does everybody already know that Charlie Kirk was also Utah Valley once before in 2019 during his campus clash with Candace Owens? I have heard that, and I don't doubt that to be true. Yeah, look, his arms didn't look badly burned. I've seen 100 different photos from that event. People kept saying that there was shadow. Again, a lot of these photos were cropped. They were taken from a cell phone like 100 feet away. So they're cropped in. So, you're going to get a lot of different distortion and a lot of chromatic aberration, which is going to change the colors, which is what's going on with some of that stuff. It's just, that's nonsense. Last super chat here. I find this amusing. They stream talking about evidence of Charlie's murder while omitting the prime suspect in his wife's disappearance, murder allegedly, and as an expert, shout out to Devin. All right, so what this is again is an ad hominem attack. I know nothing about what's going on with JF, and if he's on the unsolved mysteries, I don't know. But what I can tell you is that isn't relevant to this case at all. He presented some graphics, he presented some theories, he presented some well-articulated thesis on this. So, again, this is do better, folks. It's personal attacks without an argument.
I've been facing this for years. I'm still not in jail, and I'm not a prime suspect, given that I'm not in jail. I would be the Canadian government would be extremely happy to put me in jail, and they haven't, because there's really no evidence that this happened.
Yeah, so this is the last thing I'll talk about. The folks that are supposedly tracking this stuff down, the large majority of them, I mean, I got multiple tweets saved to my phone of Ian Carroll talking crap about Charlie Kirk before he died. Ryan Mata was all over Charlie Kirk before he died, talking crap about him. These people are all pretending, and it's all one big psyop, and it's all coordinated. I mean, you got Candace Owens, you got Ian Carroll, you got Baron Coleman, you got the crazy cat lady Mel, you got Ryan Mata. They're in this big circle jerk of putting out bad information and disinformation. Oh, and Project Constitution, one of the worst of them. I don't know how these people, it's so easy to debunk them. You guys will sit here and argue minutia and semantics with us here, but you won't hold any of these people accountable and proof any of their stuff. And it's because it's all confirmation bias. You don't want to believe us no matter how much evidence we provide you. But you'll take their word for it without any evidence. And what they're saying, I can tell you, is easily proven wrong a lot of the times. All right, folks. Justin, you got any final words for the viewers?
Not really. You guys know where to find us on X, of course, at Fenix Ammunition. And if you like what we have to say, we'd appreciate it if you headed over to our website and check out our products. We think we're one of the best manufacturers in the country, and we'd love to show you what high quality ammunition made in Detroit looks like.
Sweet. The Motor City making ammo now. I love it. JF, any final words?
Just look at how people react to rationality, to arguments, and be open to criticism. You can learn a lot from the internet, and these crowds that are blindly following influencers, you could learn so much if you were just listening to arguments.
Yeah. And yeah, folks, again, anybody out there, if you know somebody that is a prominent person that can articulate some of these theories well and not just come on here and embarrass themselves, I'm not holding them to a high standard. I will gladly have them on, and we can talk about it, and we can have a friendly discussion, even if it's a disagreement. I think that's what we need to have in all of this, so that people can weigh out what's really going on with all this. And again, if you haven't watched last night's podcast, one of the best podcasts we've done about this for sure. Having Andrea on as a lawyer going through that case, it was phenomenal. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, all those things. If you want to support us, again, there's memberships there. We have Patreon and all that stuff. Also, we have a newsletter. We don't spam you. Go check out that newsletter. Make sure you guys go follow both JF and Justin. Support an American company that supports the Second Amendment. And until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.